Hi everyone, Jordynne Hart here, and here is my engagement table. So the first lesson that I'm going to talk about would be my lesson, which was stations on poetry, and so the standard was analyze how a drama or poem's form or structure contributes to its meaning. So what students were learning was how to identify, analyze, and understand poetry while also making their own. And so what they were doing is they were at stations, they had different kind of poets from all different kinds of backgrounds, like Maya Angelou, Walt Whitman, and they were going to analyze it and also describe if it was a sonnet, if it was a couplet, that kind of thing. And then they also had to make their own. And so each station was very different. And when I first started the unit, they were not into poetry like I was. Like, I'm a huge Walt Whitman fan. And so it was interesting to see the change in engagement throughout this process, because they were in their small groups and they did wonderfully with it, and they actually looked like they were having fun, which was great. In this class, I have 8 students on IEPs, and between myself, my clinical educator, and the special education teacher, we kept all the students on task, and we were able to ask questions, help out, and deepen their learning. At the start of the station, each students got a poetry booklet with and it was numbered for each station, and so it had different worksheets and things and graphic organizers that they had to fill out and give back at the end of the stations. And so it showed us what they wrote for poetry and what they've learned. The students were super engaged in the small group activity, like I said. And as you see throughout the whole project, I'm a huge cooperative learning fan. On page 39 of Marzano's, he said that it is important for students to interact in groups about the content, and you'll see that throughout all of these. I'm really into small group projects. On page 39, you will see that there's a great deal of research on the positive effects of cooperative learning. It is especially good in the way that it allows students to see from multiple perspectives. It looks like I put food there, so I know what I'm thinking about. For the next lesson, I did a lesson for students to learn how to write argument essays. For this essay, they had to have at least 2 credible sources to back up their arguments. And so, at first I had a mini lesson on how to find good sources. I first gave them the mini lesson and kind of had all these different websites that we put up, and I'm like, is this a good source? And showed them all the reasons why it's a bad source, if it's a good source. And then I handed out a bunch of articles from the web, and they got into small groups where they had to decide if the source was good or not, and then come up to the classroom and present their evidence. And so that was kind of fun. I actually gave one of the groups article of mine from when I was a reporter, but I kind of tricked them because I also told them that I worked in the advertising sector, where I used to get paid to write articles about things that I haven't even tried yet. So I kind of tricked them on that, which might have not been fair, but it was a fun lesson and everyone was pretty engaged in it. And in this classroom, there is also a special education teacher that comes in, and it was really easy to keep everyone on task, and they were really engaged in it. So students were able to show me what they learned by their presentation. Like I said, the students were really engaged in this group activity. Again, cooperative learning. I thought this lesson went wonderfully, and I feel that students really learned according to Marzano's research, cooperative learning such as this not only facilitates knowledge development, but also creates awareness that is difficult, if not impossible, without interaction. But according to this research, group sizes should be kept small. I kept these groups to about 4 or 5 students. In one, it got a little bigger, but according to the table on page 40 of Marzano, these students can have a percentile gain of 9 in these small groups. Okay, for this third one, in this lesson, I had another 5-minute mini lesson about the claims, where to find, how to write those, and then have their evidence. This is about the argument essays, where they had to find at least 2 credible sources to back up their arguments, and these are 6th graders, mind you, and so you really have to spell it out and really show them how to write these essays, otherwise they really don't know and they just copy and paste. But I was teaching them how to make a claim, and back evidence, and then also their intro, their conclusion, what it all looks like, all laid out. And so I typed up an essay, and then I handed it out to them. And then I put them in groups of 2. And so students were given the essay that I had written, along with a pack of colored pencils. In the assigned color, students had to highlight, my claim, my reasons, my evidence for each reason, my conclusion, my intro, all in different colors, so it was color-coded. It helped them familiarize themselves with how an argument essay works. I would categorize it at a 5 just because students were in groups and they were critically thinking about and analyzing the content and reflect on what they just learned to really understand it. After we were done, we went over the worksheet, and so that was the finished product. They then handed it in, so I got to see it, and then I handed it back with the corrections the next day because some of them didn't get it, but it was cool to see them interact and be like, oh, darn, when they didn't get it right, and then, yeah, if they did get it right. So you could tell that they actually, cared about the content. And in this group as well, between myself, the clinical educator, and the special education teacher, it's really nice to have the 3 of us in these rooms. We were able to keep it, there wasn't that problem of kids talking and not doing their stuff. They were all doing their stuff because we were keeping them on task. I know that's not the reality of every situation, but it's great in this classroom. Like I said, it seemed that the students were really engaged. They got the assignment done rather quickly, and you could tell that they were into it. Like Marzano, Hattie says that small group learning is beneficial to students. On page 94, Hattie said that small group learning has significantly more positive effects than individual learning on student achievement, and I totally agree with that. So this 4th lesson is on summaries. We are reading the book 3 Times Lucky, which is a great little mystery book for 6th graders. We were trying to determine a theme or essential idea of the text, so we weren't really doing that part, but we were provide a summary of the text distinct from personal opinions or judgment. So we were writing a summary, which was a lot harder than I thought it would be with 6th graders. But anyway, I'm used to older kids and then the younger kids, so these middle ones, it's been an experience. So together we wrote a summary of the previous chapter on the board, and I just did that to show students what a summary looks like. After that, we took notes on the main things that happened in chapter 13. Then I cut the students loose to write a summary of chapter 13 on their own. I would categorize the IPI level at a 5 because the students had to think critically, analyze, and reflect on what they just learned in order to write the summary. But like I said, I had myself, the clinical educator, and the special education teacher, where we were able to keep students on task. The product that I got from the students, or the proof that they learned is through the summaries that they turn in on Google Docs. And I believe that all the students were really engaged in it. I didn't have to push for answers, and students did well at asking questions and working on their summaries. All of them did really well on them, actually. On page 35, Marzano said summarizing requires students to create a personalized account of the information from a critical input experience. He said that note-taking is closely related to summarizing in that it requires students to translate information from a critical input experience into their own appreciated form. 6th graders are not good at note-taking. This is what I found out. Like, I did not realize this from the first time I went into the room. So I would have like these PowerPoints, like I like doing mini lessons and then letting them loose. But they would always ask, like, Miss Hart, what do we write down? I'm like, what? And I realized they don't know how to summarize the information. So that's been one of my goals throughout this, is trying to teach them how to, like, break information down, and I'm trying to, like, get them to, like, what was important to you out of all this, and so it's been a step-by-step, so I totally agree with Marzano on this. Like, it was a great experience, and, I mean, it wasn't the most engaging. It was engaging, and the students seemed to like it, because they really, like, once I surveyed them, all of them really liked 3 Times Lucky a lot, and so, but it wasn't like the stations or the small groups. It was kind of individualized learning, but, yeah, it was small groups still. This last one is the 7th graders analyzed poetry. This was kind of before the stations with my mini lessons before. So the standard was analyze how a drama or poem's form or structure contributes to its meaning. So for this lesson, students learned how to analyze and understand poetry. So for this lesson, we went over We Wear the Mask, one of my favorites by Paul Laurence Dunbar. First, I gave them some background information about the author and some background information about how life was for African Americans in America during this time. The poem was out, so it was like during the Harlem Renaissance, so a big time for African Americans in literature. So we went over the first stanza together. We wear the mask that grins and lies, hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. And so we went over there, that analyzed it, wrote down what it meant, and then I sent them out to decipher the rest of, in small groups on their own. Each group then had to stand up and tell the class what they thought the poem meant line by line. So, since I used small groups to promote learning, I believe the IPIA level would be a 5, because really they had the knowledge that I gave them to critically think and discuss the poems in their small groups. Between myself, my clinical educator, and special education teacher, we had them on lockdown. Again, we were able to really keep them on task and answer all the questions that they needed answered. The proof that they learn would be by their presentation. They were able to get instant feedback from myself and their peers and truly understand how to decipher poetry before I sent them off into their stations. So students were engaged because they had to really dissect and discuss the meaning of the poem. So they kind of had like, no, this means this. No, this means this. And then I would kind of ask some questions, and then I would be like, okay, so now what do you think? And then they would decide on something, and there was no, it wasn't a bloodbath. There was some, they didn't agree on everything, but, like, it was a great discussion. Their small groups consisted of 2 to 3 students, and according to Hattie, the effects of small group learning were significantly enhanced when group sizes are small. Along with this, Hattie also said on page 95 that small group learning also leads to greater self-esteem among undergraduate students, which I am totally for. At my school, it's on a base, and a lot of them don't know each other very well because they're constantly moving, their parents are in the military, and so, like, that's another reason why I love the small groups. And it just helps them meet some people and feel comfortable, and really just, like, lets them, I don't know, it's just great. But anyway, thank you so much. I'm sorry it turned into 15 minutes. And that's my engagement table.